Oh, listen, no. Blame it on me. Oh, I am so used to that. Blame it on me.
That's what you get the big bucks for.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right.
We have where's, no, our student.
She has class right now.
Oh, she has class.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good reason. So we do have
That
a
never
form.
stopped me from coming.
Yes, all right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were leaving.
Oh.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
New teacher.
Wow. All your places with bright, shiny faces. Good morning to you. I'm pleased to call this meeting to order, and I apologize for being a few minutes late, but when we only see each other infrequently, we were making the rounds. First order of business is to welcome Michael Sitton. Hi, Michael. Approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Everyone received a copy of the minutes in your packet. I assume you read them carefully. And is there a motion to accept the minutes? Motion by Roger, seconded by Steve. Any discussion? Corrections, additions, subtractions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes as submitted, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously, thank you. The chair's report will be very brief this morning, and I apologize in advance if I seem to be a little distracted. Some of you may have overheard the conversation. My granddaughter had an injury in basketball Wednesday night down in Connecticut and managed to break both bones in her left wrist.
Ooh.
She collided with a rather large person on the other team, and as Delaney put it, she bounced off the girl, and as she was falling, she did what you're never supposed to do. She put her hand out to break her fall and broke the radius and the ulna, and so she's right now at the orthopedic person. We're hoping that she doesn't need surgery, but we'll see. And I saw it happen because I was watching the game on live stream. I knew that she was hurt because she's one of those pops right back up and gets right back in the game, and that didn't happen. They took her right to the ER. And the good news is it's her left hand, and she's right-handed. Me, I broke my right hand, my right wrist. It'll be a year on February 13th, slipping in the parking lot at work. And did exactly the same thing, put my hand out to break the fall. So the good news is Delaney's 17, not 70 like I was when I broke mine. And I'm sure she's going to be fine.
Is she home or?
No, she's still in Connecticut. Vicki and Bobby are going down tomorrow to see her, but she's getting top of the line care, and she had apparently the Delaney Hayes fan club at the ER because the coach brought her flowers. The two mothers and their daughters who play sports with Delaney, who live in the area, came to the ER. The dean on duty who drove her to the ER was there.
Wow.
And there were like 6 or 7 people at the ER, and then the doctor and stuff at the school. Everything's fine. So in addition, before I forget, I have 2 people that I would like to introduce to you who are at their first college council meetings. And if I get the names wrong, Eric will correct me. First is Dr. Patrick Meldrum, and Dr. Meldrum is our new Director of Student Conduct. And also with us is Sharif Hashim, who was our athletic director, who reminded me that, or Eric reminded me that tonight is women's sports.
National Girls and Women's in Sports Celebration over at Max.
So you're all invited.
5:30.
Pack the place.
5:30. So tonight's the night to fight like a girl.
There you go.
So welcome, both of you. And that ends my report. gonna keep it short.
Okay, you're looking at me, it must be time for my report.
It is.
And I will say, we wish that Dr. Meldrum would be very bored, and then I think our new athletic director, Sharif Hashim, has already shown a great deal of excitement over in Maxie. I'm really proud of the work he's doing. So I hope you will all join me for Pack the Place tonight. And I'll start with basketball. Fortunately, we have had no injuries like that in basketball, but both of our basketball teams, men's and women's, have been doing extraordinarily well. So I hope you'll join me in supporting all of our Bears teams. And I'll remind you that you can stream all of those events live. I'm going to brag a little bit about our a cappella. 4 of our a cappella groups went to the quarterfinals, and we swept the top 3 places. And of course, there were not 4 places, there were only 3, and we had just an incredible showing there. This is also the season for our amazing arts programs, so I encourage you to just really keep an eye out for recitals at Crane, for dance performances at the PAC. We had an amazing dance visiting artist this last week. There's so much going on in the spring semester that it's hard to see all of them. I want to give a few updates. This is lobby season, so this is the time of year when I'm regularly in SUNY and down in Albany. And so for those of you who are so inclined, there are 2 main things that we're working on with SUNY in terms of our lobbying efforts. One is for the state to fund the collective bargaining increases. As you may or may not know, the executive branch engages in collective bargaining on behalf of our unions. They receive multi-year contracts with collective bargaining increases, and we really need the state to fund those collective bargaining increases. Otherwise, tuition ends up covering that gap, or we end up needing to make budget cuts. So one of the most important pieces for my lobbying effort is what we call a full maintenance of effort. That is, not only do the state provide the same support as last year, but they cover the mandated collective bargaining costs, which for our campus can run $750,000 to $1 million a year. There's also perhaps some appetite within the legislature to fund what we call the TAP gap. That's the gap between what the tuition assistance program covers, the TAP covers, and our tuition. It was frozen, it was frozen at the tuition amount, 4 or 5 years ago. So it's a significant resource that the campus has to cover between the amount of our tuition and the amount the TAP, the full TAP grant covers that we're on the hook for. So those are the 2 main things that I'll be lobbying for. And if you are so inclined, if you're in conversation with any of our delegation, I hope that you would also join me in advocating for SUNY and for SUNY Potsdam. So that's the state level. Very close to home, we've got a couple of key searches. We are very close to wrapping up the search for a Dean of School of Education and Professional Studies. Walt, I think, is counting the days, but we are not counting the days till you step back to faculty.
I appreciate that, but I was anointed as the future former dean last night.
Of our class, yes.
I really need to be trademarked.
Really?
No,
We should have cards made up.
we had a small but robust pool, a small but really very good pool, and I think we'll be able to announce some good news there soon. We have 3 candidates for the Arts and Sciences Dean search coming on campus shortly. That was a very large and very rich pool, so I am certain we're going to have a good result there.
Plus we can use Walt if it doesn't work.
That's true. That's true. We can postpone his future former
I have a
status.
little bit of hair left.
We can help. We can help. But I think those are 2 key searches for our campus, because we know that level of academic leadership is really critical for new programs for, ensuring that faculty are in the right places at the right times, doing the right things. So while we're incredibly grateful for the leadership of our extraordinary deans, we couldn't convince Walt to stay on longer, and Steve, we couldn't convince Steve to stay longer either. The other search, the very high-level search that's ongoing is the Vice President for Enrollment Management. The search consultant that we're working with is developing the pool now. The word is that they've had a number of applications, and I don't know if you remember the exact number so far, or Betty, whether you.
I think it was like 14. Yeah, that was a couple of weeks ago.
So
And that was after a week of it.
Yeah. So the ads are out now. They're actively seeking folks, and the search committee, which is chaired by Provost Bergeron, will be starting to review those applications at the end of this month. So I'm very optimistic for that search. Enrollments. Why don't I just give a little word about enrollments, and then I'll turn it back to you, June. Our graduate enrollments, thankfully, are beginning to look up again. The good news is that people are taking the shortage for teachers in key areas, especially in the North Country, seriously, and so students are starting to come back. So very, very pleased that our graduate enrollments, especially the MST childhood and undergraduate enrollments in early childhood, are finally becoming robust again, which, as you can imagine, will be causing some resource challenges for their faculty in the School of Education and Professional Studies, as the dean and the provost have regularly remind me. But that is very, very good news. We have our new program, the Masters in Management, and that has been experiencing some very, very nice application flow. In Watertown, you can now go from an associate's degree in business all the way through the Masters in Management without leaving Watertown. The associate's degree is provided by JCC, the remaining 2 degrees by us. And our Watertown enrollments are also doing very, very well. Our traditional undergraduate population, we're seeing some declines in applications there. This is happening statewide. There are a handful of reasons for that. One is a decrease in our EOP applications statewide. We think part of this is due to the greater awareness of and a greater sort of accuracy. We historically have gotten thousands of EOP applicants for, this year we have 25, 30 slots. So we've historically had very large numbers for very few slots. Students, I think, have a greater sense of, the requirements for the EOP program. So we're seeing some declines there, but we're also seeing throughout the state declines everywhere. So what we're working on is increasing what we call yield, so that for every student who applies and is accepted, we're trying some new things to ensure that every student for whom we're a good fit actually enrolls here. We're doing some different kinds of open houses, some program-specific open houses. We're doing some new forms of outreach. So my plea for you as our advocates in the community, we've always done very well in the North Country. I say we get a little bit more than our market share, and we want to continue to have more than our market share in the North Country. But if you see a student, if you could just continue to encourage folks to really take a second, a third, or a fourth look. When students visit our campus, we're often able to help them understand that we're really the best place for them. So anything that you can do as you're out and about in the community are always helpful. I think the only other thing I'll mention is we've got a handful of new projects and new programs in the pipeline. We just were certified for an online certificate in college teaching. This is a graduate certificate. We were just listed in SUNY online, which is a very good thing. But we've got some really exciting programs that are under development, including a program in environmental science to go along with our environmental studies program. And I would say I'm very, very proud of the faculty and the work that they're doing to try and meet the needs of students as they come. So happy to answer any questions folks have. Lots going on campus.
Questions? Discussion?
So the program at JCC, is the master's just starting, or has that been?
We've long had masters in education programs. We had a master's in, you know, it had such a long name. I'm going to remember all of it. Organizational leadership and OLPT. We streamlined it into a master's in management, and there are 3 tracks, and it's much easier for students to understand. It's more in line with what students are looking for. So that's been around for a long time, but we've got it's a new name. It's the 3 tracks are new. The MST programs have been there. I'm looking at getting them all for.
It's not new.
It's
Yeah, for several years, I'm not sure exactly when I started before I came on board, but it's
at least 4
it's very
years,
robust,
5.
right?
And then the early childhood, we've got a bachelor's in early childhood. That's new, and that's really exciting.
Wait, say that again?
The bachelor's in early childhood, you can now
Yes.
take that in Watertown,
Right.
and that started
Fall. No,
Fall.
19.
fall.
Excuse me, I probably should have asked this question a
Oh,
while
do.
ago, but how exactly does it work with JCC? And do they give you a building? Do they?
No, that's a great question. They have the JHEC, the Jefferson Higher Education Center, which has a number of partners, including Empire State, ourselves, a couple of privates. We have an office there and a full-time staff person there, Laura Carbone, who sees, I was going to say, it's like a revolving door. Students come in, they ask questions. It's an incredibly busy office. And so in the JHEC Center, the Higher Ed Center, a number of campuses have cubicles and spaces, and then they are able to use the classrooms. And
Which say, we also have a distance learning class
Thank you.
that we just added in Sally Hall, so faculty are able to,
yes,
they are able to broadcast here and have students at
Yep.
JCC, and a lot of faculty have been going back and forth. I know that Vicki does that occasionally,
yes,
where they go down to Watertown and teach and broadcast up here,
Yep.
and vice versa. So that's Josh LeVay did that. It's been a great addition to our programs and saves a lot of resources.
Yep.
But faculty also travel there. There's
Yep.
a number of courses we do on the weekends, so we go down 3 or 4 weekends through the semester, and they're pretty intense graduate course.
Do we rent?
yes. We have a memorandum of understanding that outlines the rent and what they provide and what we provide.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I see now we have a presentation, but I don't see Alan.
They're just out there.
Oh, okay. Today our presentation is on the general education, otherwise known as Gen Ed program. And for those of you that are new to the council, Alan will. Oh, hi Dave. How's it going? Oh, good morning. It's been hours.
I know, well, 12 hours.
They presented at Faculty Senate yesterday.
Okay. So you'll hear
We're
all
in
about,
talking mode.
It was a robust discussion.
all about the Gen Ed program.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Alan Hersker. I'm the current director of the General Education Program. I'm also a faculty member in anthropology, and I'm interim assistant provost. I'll actually probably let my colleagues introduce themselves now.
Yeah,
So,
I'm Sheila McIntyre and I'm in the history department.
And I'm Kelly Bonner, and I'm in the Department of Public Health and Human Performance.
And I'm Nathan Perry, I'm in the philosophy department.
so this is a not small, actually it's probably more the majority of the folks on the General Education Steering Committee, the folks who have been working on this. We have been, I think in May of this semester, it will be 4 years that we've been involved in this process. So we appreciate the opportunity of coming in to talk to you all a little bit about what we've done, the underpinnings of what we've done, and where we're moving forward. Just, I guess, by way of a couple preparatory remarks, our current general education program was developed in the 1980s. David was involved in that process. And at the time it was...
He was 12.
Right, he was 12, right. He promises he's not going to be here when we redo it again. But at the time when it was developed, it was award-winning. It was an amazing program that I literally did win awards for its innovation. Over the years, though, small changes eroded the integrity of the program, whether they were faculty initiated, whether they were imposed by SUNY, whether they were mandated by presidents who aren't sitting in the room right now. But what really happened was, what happened was that this coherence of the program really eroded. And I think, you know, for me, I'm an anthropologist. I've done some work in linguistics, and I think the most convincing thing is everybody on this campus, students, faculty, even me as the gen ed director, talked about gen ed requirements as boxes to be checked, right? As things to be gotten out of the way. You know, gen ed was really presented as this impediment to graduation, and that is this, you know, general education is the core curriculum of our college. It's what we all share, and to talk about it as an impediment really underscored the importance that we needed to take some time to do it. So we embarked on this process, as I said, in May of 2017. Go ahead, Kelly. And the first thing we did was Provost Bergeron convened a 30-person task force. Representatives from every academic department, as well as some other units on campus, were invited. And of the many things that the task force did as they worked for, I guess it was about 6 months, well, actually a semester, was come up with a list of aspirational goals for our new general education program. This is a small list of that, but these are some of the things we talked about. One of the things that we all agreed was really important is that general education requirements needed to be de-siloed. We needed to have a program where departments didn't own gen ed requirements, that we needed to kind of broaden participation in them. Another thing that was important for everybody in the task force was that the skills, abilities, the knowledge in the program was going to be scaffolded so that students would receive a good foundational basis in their first year, and then through the course of their 4, 5, 6 years at Potsdam would really build upon those skills. We have created or proposed WAYS courses, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a couple minutes. But these are those foundational courses. So a critical thinking seminar for first year students in here, a writing seminar for first year students, and a talking about diversity seminar for first year students. These are owned by the faculty, right? So no one department. Diffused throughout this program, quite explicitly actually, are high impact practices. We have seen lots of research out there which demonstrates that these practices really increase student retention, right? So in the program that we're working on, there are 3 of those in a student's first year. We also integrated gen ed requirements into the departmental curriculum. So again, the gen ed is not separate from what departments do for major requirements or minor requirements, but rather those are both critical components in the bachelor's degrees. And what we've created, and my colleagues will go a little bit more into it, is a high impact program which is unique to the SUNY system. So I think just the broad, the 30,000 foot view, what a lot of campuses are doing is in fact bowing to pressure, maybe, and saying, all right, we'll just go with the SUNY requirements. It's easier, they're terrible, but that's the easiest thing to do. We're trying a different take, right? What we want to do is make general education something that our campus can be proud of, a program, we've talked to admissions about this, that we can use to sell to our students, right? So gen ed isn't something that you get out of the way. Gen ed is really integral to the SUNY Potsdam experience. So, okay. David, I believe.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there are basically 3 tiers. So it's not dissimilar from our current program in that sense. What we're calling the ways of beginning, which delivers the basic skills or competencies that students are going to require to succeed throughout their 4 years here. The ways of thinking, the best way to think about these is as literacies, introduction to various ways of thinking about the world. And then the ways of connecting, which allow us to apply the skills and those literacies to understanding their own more particular subject matters in those cases, their major. So it's an attempt to bridge the gap between the general education program, the pathways program, and their major programs. So I think I'm gonna walk through each of these. So here's the ways of beginning. It's composed of 3 different seminar courses. A critical thinking seminar, a college writing seminar, and a talking about diversity seminar. Speaking, writing, and critical thinking skills basically is what is put forward here. So the content of the courses, this is particularly true of 101 and the college writing seminar, the content of these courses, my expertise when I teach these courses, is used to deliver the skills, right? It's a delivery method. And the idea is that we're going to talk about sexy things, right? In these, our content is going to be sexy, attractive to students, and through that content, we're going to deliver those skills. So Sheila taught a Wicked 101 seminar on Salem, on witchcraft in Salem. Kim Bouchard taught one on censorship. I taught one on Darwin and the reception of Darwin in the 1800s. So, but the idea is not really to get the content across. The idea is to use this content to deliver the skills. Same with the college writing seminar. Talking about diversity seminar is slightly different because, at least in a broad sense, the content is determined. And the content is determined as having to do with issues of diversity and inclusion, broadly construed. But that still leaves an enormous amount of room for students to, for faculty to choose their specific subject matters. We have piloted 8 of these already, I think very successfully. We are piloting some of these this semester. We will be piloting some of these next semester, and the pilots will be continuing over the next few semesters. So we're trying to gather some data. Really, the fundamental idea is that these are small classes, and these will allow faculty, something that Potsdam has always been very good at, faculty-student connections. So their first experience on campus will be a critical thinking seminar with a small number of students with a faculty member. We're thinking that this will also be tied to their advising. So that faculty member will be an advisor. And this is their introduction to Potsdam and to the rigors of college life, something that students need more and more introduction to. They come onto campus with fewer skills, we're finding.
Are these full credit courses?
These are all 3 credit courses. They're all 3 credit courses.
David, what do you mean by piloting?
I'm sorry. We're running experiments over there. Yeah, that's all I know. Right?
I have a bunch of questions. Part of this is remedial, right?
No, it's not remedial at all.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, no.
When I read this last night, there were a couple of impressions I got. One of which was that part of it could be remedial. Some of the students wouldn't have these skills when they got here, so let's bring them up to basic ability. Second thing was it's training students to be like debaters, which I think is excellent. And that's a skill. Debate and extent is a skill that is gone, and I'm very impressed by that idea. And is there a major? Can you have a major in this?
No.
No.
No. So again, these are skills developments, so I wouldn't put it quite in terms of debating, but some of it is respectful. So I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. Respectful disagreement. How do we argue?
Debate with them. Go ahead.
Right. Brian and I have had respectful disagreements in the past. No, that's exactly right, and you're absolutely right that this is a skill, a competency that students need to develop, and they haven't. But these are not remedial in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. In fact, many of the faculty, so critical thinking is sort of a philosopher's in our bag. It's our expertise. But most of the other faculty, I think, had to work very hard to get their critical thinking skills up to the level of being prepared to teach these courses.
I think one of the ways to look at it is that these 3 seminars will make explicit these things. So I think all of us would say, I've always taught critical thinking, I've always taught writing, but now I'm gonna stop and show them what it looks like and how to do it. So it's like you're pulling back the curtain on the little wizard behind the, like you're explaining and stopping to explain how this works, right? I think it's a little bit like bringing high school students into the world of deeper intellectual thought processes.
Perfect. Good. So the ways of thinking, again, I think the ways, I'm not going to walk through this in any detail, but I think the way to think about this is developing literacies. We talk about scientific literacy, but we don't often talk about aesthetic literacy, but the idea transfers perfectly well, right? What we want, we're not going to make artists, we're not going to make historians, we're not going to make mathematicians, we're not going to make scientists, etc., from out of these areas. What we hope to be able to do is to introduce them to the ways of thinking that are required to make solid judgments in these areas, right? Aristotle famously says that a generally educated person is the person who can judge about anything, right? Not about their narrow specialty, but can make judgments about anything. And that's what literacy is all about. So we want to introduce them to the ways in which artists think, the ways in which historians think, the ways in which mathematicians think. Right? So again, literacies is the best way to think about that. And then the ways of connecting. These I will walk a little bit through. So this is we have a third ways course here. And the idea here is that it will be a team-taught disciplinary course. 2 faculty members in the classroom at the same time representing different disciplines, a single subject matter. Again, the respectful disagreement, but now they get to see it modeled between Sheila and I, because we're going to disagree, right? But how do we do this in a professional and in a professional manner? So that's the ways 301. Connecting through language is replacing our current language requirement. It's introducing them to the salient aspects of a language other than the one that they speak, and into the cultural connections that language has. Connecting globally is the study of ideas, people outside of the United States. Okay? Connecting clearly in major, the last 2 will occur in the major. In the major, then you will learn the standards for communication in that discipline, which are different in theater and dance than in art history, or in history, or in philosophy, or in biology, etc. And then the connecting theory practice ties into the SUNY Applied Learning initiative, right? This is where students take what they've learned in the classroom and put it to use, right? Again, in whichever ways particular disciplines do it. So these are very much tied to a particular discipline. They're delivered within the major itself. So this is a transition between the 2. I think. So skills are scaffolded throughout the program, right? So critical thinking, obviously, first is introduced in the critical thinking seminar, but then it's scaffolded up, right? So it occurs in the student learning outcomes for thinking foundationally, and also in the Ways 301 course. Writing it is in the student learning outcomes, obviously, for the college writing seminar, but also in thinking historically, thinking foundationally, thinking mathematically, connecting clearly, communicating in the major, right? And speaking to is scaffolded throughout. So the idea is that we bring them in, we give them we give them that basic skill set, and then that skill set is practiced throughout the Pathways program as they progress through their 4 years.
Okay, so something that we're really proud of with this general education revision is that it's driven by the faculty of this campus. So that started with that very large task force that came up with all of the, well, what are we doing and how can we do it better and what are our goals? And that did a lot of great work of kind of launching the big ideas. And then the steering committee was formed. We were all members of that task force, and we applied to be members of the steering committee. And that was a lot of years ago. And then the working group. Pardon?
Was he involved?
Yeah, David was absolutely involved. Yes,
David was there in the
T-Rexes were roaming the planet. And then out of that steering committee, we sort of put it back out to the faculty and developed working groups. because we wanted to quite evidently model that de-siloing. So I, for example, was on the Thinking Historically group, but so was an art historian, so was a member of the drama department, so was a member of the English department, and so was a member of the anthropology department. Because all of those departments engage the epistemology of thinking historically, right? So each of the working groups, and there were 60 plus people that served on the working groups, those working groups were tasked with coming up with a course description, like what is a TH or a TA course going to do? What is the criteria that the faculty has to do in order to teach it? And what are the student learning outcomes that will be expected? So once a student finishes my history class or Jay Pecora's history of drama class, what we will share SLOs. We of course don't share content, but the outcomes for the student will be the same. And so those working groups worked very hard, and we're grateful for all of their contributions. And then we started developing pilot faculty programs. So different parts of the course have been piloted, will continue to be piloted, and those faculty had another set of tasks. So not only did the pilot faculty have to teach this the first time and be kind of guinea pigs, they also had to develop course guidelines. So going forward, if new faculty would like to teach one of these courses, there's an 8 to 10 page packet of things that they will need. The pilot faculty involve themselves in designing workshops and continuing education for faculty, etc. So at every stage of this process, and of course this continues, the faculty across this campus from all 3 schools have participated in designing it. So this is how we have engaged Faculty Senate here. I'm sure Faculty Senate is so tired of us, but I think we presented every Faculty Senate meeting since it started on one level or another. Of course, we have gone at various stages of the program to Faculty Senate to ask for a vote to keep going, basically. Because we heard some horror stories at a conference we went to from other schools that had done Gen Ed revision, where they kind of went off on their own, did all this work, and then showed up at their Faculty Senate or whatever governing body they have, and said, okay, here's our program, and they were like, yeah, no, we don't like it. It was like, so we thought, we're gonna make sure that like every step of this process is at least gotten enough of an approval for us to keep going, right? So we're not gonna rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. If the whole thing's going down, let's not, spend all this time. So we're so gratified that at every one of those votes so far, we've gotten really overwhelming support by our colleagues and across the Faculty Senate. So there's the votes, the timelines of things we've done. So, it was sort of like drafting and then the program itself, and now we're in phase 3, where we're engaging what we're gonna need to do to actually implement this thing. So that's our next vote, will be hopefully the last one. In April will be the final blue ribbon, hopefully, where the Faculty Senate says, okay, you're good to go. So that's gonna hope April or May of this year. So here's the survey data. We did a huge survey out to all of the faculty and asked them to look at all of the course descriptions, SLOs, and course criteria for each element of the program. And so we've broken it down for you. These are sort of the numbers of people who said, I support the description criteria and SLOs of all of these individual items. And as you can see, we're just really delighted that the work we've done has been so well received by our colleagues. And let's call it, the colleagues did a lot of the work. So it's gratifying. Yeah.
I like what you're doing. I'm just confused on how it relates to a brand new student coming in. How do you structure that student to walk them through this particular set of classes? If, let's say, I want to major in psychology, how do you structure that student to say, okay, this semester we think you should take this course. We don't think you need to take another one until the 3rd semester, and then you should take this one, and then you should. How are you gonna sort of phase that in working with new students?
Well, summer advising is really the place.
And so these courses will also first allow them to explore some disciplines. Again, the emphasis is not on content here, but they might discover something right there that they want to do. They study witchcraft and film, and they decide, maybe I should take another history course. So many of our students come in with a major in mind. I think something like 70% of them change their major once.
Something like that.
right? Is that
Twice.
roughly right?
Yeah.
Or
Three
twice.
times, yeah.
And more our students are coming in without knowing what they want to major in. And actually, we're trying to become a campus that's quite friendly to that encourages exploratory, what we're calling exploratory students, undeclared students. And the hope is that that this is also an exploratory process. So they will receive advising, right? If they're undeclared majors, they will receive an advisor in their area of interest if they have one. If they come in declared with a major, they will have an advisor in that major. And then it depends on the advisor to walk them through the program.
But the other goal is that even if, like I entered university and I was going to be a psychologist, I clearly didn't do that, So I think one of the goals and one of the beauties of a liberal arts education is that these first year seminars will prepare you to do anything. I mean, I can't think of a job where you don't need to think critically, write and talk, right? Those are just all. So in some ways that first year is, like David said, a little more friendly, both to the student knows exactly what they want to do, because they will take a WAYS 101 course with a psychologist. But also to the students who don't know what they want to do, they'll surf around a little bit and get a little taste of some various content across campus.
Is this going to be in all three of the schools or just in? All right, good.
So one of our goals was right now there are exceptions, some exceptions to our general education program for Crane students and some exceptions for our general education students in the School of Education and Professional Studies. And one of our goals was to have a common Potsdam experience. Every student who graduates from here graduates with the same basic pathways program. So that was one of our goals, and we hope we will, this has yet to be seen, but we hope to be able to pull that off.
So if this is approved by the faculty senate, we go forward, and I can turn the clock way back, and I want to come to Potsdam, and I'm sure that I want to be biology major.
Yeah.
Do I have to take this?
Yes.
So it's foundational,
Yes.
to some extent, it's checked box.
Yes. Now, if you're coming in and bringing credits in that you took at Potsdam before, there may be ways of transferring those in, right? And there are ways of transferring for students at another institution who want to transfer into count equivalencies.
And in saying check the box, I'm not being critical. I think that's absolutely required in today's world, especially with the millennials who don't have skills.
The other thing, and I think this is the room to make this really clear,
Careful.
what we have learned is that this kind of high impact practice in the seminar level, it absolutely increases retention. So like LaGuardia Community College introduced, and that's a college that has more struggles than Potsdam does, introduced a first year seminar and they increased retention 17% in 2 years. So, we don't have to keep very many more students through this program, I think, to suggest that this work was worth it.
Those WAYS courses, those 3 WAYS courses are those kind of freshman seminars are very common in private institutions and top tier public institutions. My own son went to one of my sons went to William and Mary, and he thought that so it's a public institution, but it's a high tier public institution. He said that his freshman seminar was one of the best experiences he had on campus in 4 years, and he had a very good experience. I mean, he loved the institution. It connects students to the institution. That's the idea. That's precisely what we're trying to achieve. So this is exactly what we mean by a high impact practice. Right? This has an immediate impact on the students. It increases retention. It connects them to the campus. And it's going to be signature. We will be the only 4-year that offers this kind of an experience for our students. We hope to sell that.
So these are all designed to be taken in the freshman year?
Yes. Yes. Those 3 are designed to be taken in the freshman year.
Both Providence and Notre Dame require exactly that. As William and Mary.
How will this impact transfer students?
Yes.
So Terry is not here. We don't think that there will be. We will have to come up with a list of equivalencies. So just as is the case now, a student who comes in with an AA or an AS degree will have completed the general education program. We're thinking about one minor exception to that for the reasons that I just mentioned with regard to the WAYS courses. we were thinking about trying to develop a critical thinking seminar at the 300 level for transfer students to precisely help with that transition to becoming a Potsdam student. That's still in the exploratory phase.
And also because a lot of transfer students come in with pretty much only lower division numbers. So for them to get 45 credits of upper division to graduate, it's helpful if we could make a required 300 level class that might start them off on that foot.
And then if they come in without a degree, Roger, we will have equivalencies. So if they took calculus at their institution, then that will count.
And we have been working with transfers and admissions right from the get-go.
You don't have to answer this question if you don't wish to, but looking at plus or minus 20–25% of the faculty senate who are not apparently on board with this, how do you contend with that?
So my response to that, Roger, is if I can get 75% of faculty to agree about anything, man, this is success. This is, it's like herding cats. So that's my immediate response to that. We're never going to make everybody happy. And there are all sorts of reasons why people are unhappy. Some of them, I think, has to do with turf issues. Some people are losing in this program. There's no doubt about it. Some people are sitting back there right by us. So we're going from requiring 2 sciences to 1 science. And that makes some people unhappy. And I understand that. It makes them unhappy for good reasons. Right? We're going from 2 arts to 1 art, right?
I'll add though that being on 2 dean searches, this was very attractive to candidates, and they saw its innovation and creativity, and I think it drew some of our candidates here.
Nice. Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Just made my day.
And I also think that some of these numbers reflect, so I just sort of called Walt out, I'm sorry for that.
No.
Right, but Walt didn't like the idea. Walt was a vocal opponent of the idea of shrinking the sciences from 2 to 1. Fair?
Fair.
Right? And so he's probably one of those that voted against it.
But he's also loves the creative nature
So,
of the program. So
that's right.
I mean, that was a small piece that I would dealt with within my department.
I think another thing with that 25% of the loyal opposition is because we have continually been pushing information out through this whole process, we know about that. Like we know what those 25% of people are thinking, and it's actually given us an opportunity to address those concerns now, to change the program now, or not, as it were. But it's been a really iterative process, which I think we're all really proud of.
And I think part of it also was it was earlier in the process and no one saw the big picture yet. So it wasn't like you saw the complete program. So.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have to run to class, but thank you all for giving us the time. They can stay.
Well, I can say another 5, and then I also have to run to class. But I'll try to finish my slides and ask.
But I wanted to say, if any of you want to, I'm happy to sit down and talk with any of you individually. Email me, whatever.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
So I just want to update you with where we are now. So we are working through phase 3, which is essentially the implementation phase. So this is when we have gone out and over the break, we contacted all of the departments, asked them to fill out a worksheet that essentially said, here's what I can do. Here's the WAYS courses we can offer, here's the thinking courses we can offer. And we have now so we've compiled that data, it's 95,000 pages. And then we have gone out to each department chair as a committee to sit down with them and say, okay, so let's talk about this. We see that this particular course might fulfill this. What do you think? How can we help you? What can we do? So that's the process we're in right now. Of course, we have to look at a transition plan because there will be a point at which we have students in both programs. We suspect most students who are given the choice will jump to the new program, but we don't know that. And we won't know that, unfortunately, until we get started. We have to also figure out how we're going to pay for it. It's not a particularly expensive thing to do, but it is going to require some money. And so we have to try to work through that. And then again, we're going up for this next vote. So these are when, currently right now, we're working on developing professional development workshops. How will we encourage faculty to participate in a program which will require a fair degree of work from them outside of their normal wheelhouse, working with departments, and then if the program is approved, then we begin the onslaught of literally hundreds of programs, hundreds of courses being submitted for these new designators. So that will be, hopefully the working groups will come back into the picture and we will work through some of that. And then we're hoping we launch this thing in fall 2020. And that is the first incoming class of this new Pathways program. But of course, all that depends on the faculty senate vote at the end of this semester.
What do you think the cost would be, the additional cost? Do you have a clue?
It's really hard for us to know. Alan knows a little bit where we're working on that now.
Yeah, so we are working on the budget. I think one of the things we might not have mentioned is that this program is smaller than our current program.
In
So
number
just-
of credits.
Right, in number of credits required. So just by that, there's going to need to be fewer classes.
Right.
You know, again, the WAYS courses, those 3 first-year student seminars are small seminar-style courses, but we need, you know, keep in mind that we also have our freshman writing now, which is capped at I think 20. We have freshman speaking. Many of those are small courses. You know, so there is going to be, it's not that big of a jump. But I'm working with Chris D'Amito, who is also on the steering committee, is the Assistant Dean in Arts and Sciences, who really is involved with the nuts and bolts. So one of the things we're working on now is that budget.
And one of the things that big bunch of faculty survey data, not survey data, but the faculty departmental worksheets showed us is that like a whole big chunk of this is already covered. So we counted the number of seats in each of those thinkings. We have plenty, lots of departments willing to teach the WAYS courses by putting, you know, by taking a secondary writing course out of writing intensive and putting it into the major. That's better, you know, so actually we would argue that the program may be less expensive to run because of the more efficient way of distributing credits.
Once those startup costs, the training, the
Yeah.
professional development to get everybody on board with it.
I don't know about the others in the room, but I would appreciate an update on this, perhaps a year. Where are we at?
Actually, this update will come in next time you meet, when we find out where the faculty senate is.
All right, very good.
So,
Yeah. You may never see us again.
If we're not in the room next time, then
You'll know what happened.
So no news is not necessarily good news next time.
Right. I need to also go teach about 17th century smallpox, but what I would offer to you, if anybody's interested, I have a set of 22 student evaluations from my pilot of WAYS 101. I am more than happy to email that PDF to you. If you would like to see up close and personal what the first set of guinea pigs thought about this class, I think you'll be, especially you, I think will be impressed at how self-reflective they are. And even the bad things they say about me, I'm grateful for their self-reflection. And I think the course itself actually encourages that. So happy to send that. Just send me a quick email at the history department and I'll attach the PDF, no problem. There don't have any student names on them, so I'm not breaking anybody's privacy. Any questions for me before I dash? Super, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I go out that way?
Yes.
Yes. That's where my stuff is. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Any other questions?
Left with me. Sorry, Kelly.
Okay, so I'll give you the hard question. No.
That's okay.
First of all, I just want to say I'm very pleased and impressed with the inclusion of your end users in this process, rather than, as she was saying before, where they come, oh, look what you're gonna do now, here's your new program, and it's like, no, that doesn't work, our hours don't, whatever.
Thank you.
So I'm very, very happy about that. And I'm curious to know, because several times was mentioned about how we're gonna sell this to the students.
Mhm.
How are you gonna do that?
So and that's a really good question, June. And you know, I do a lot of work with the admissions open houses and that stuff. And I do a little dog and pony show with Sean Partridge in the Student Success Center. And one of the stats that I love to bring up is a couple of years ago, the AACU did some research with for-profit and non-profit employers. And they asked them, you know, so what are you looking for in somebody you're hiring? Right, you know, what do you want in a new employee? And what they found was I don't know the numbers, but I think something like 87% of the employers said what they want are employees who can think critically, who can solve problems, who can communicate well, right? And that, you know, there's a list of stats that I go through that really demonstrate that. That's what this program does, right? You know, I think sometimes I always remind myself, you know, students here aren't not getting a degree in anthropology or a degree in biology, they're getting a bachelor's degree with a major in that. So this program is gonna, and that's a sell, right? And I don't mean to be crass about this, but this program can help you get into grad school. This program can help you get a job because it's actually explicitly giving you the skills you're going to need to compete when you're out there. So that's one, I think, obvious line that we can use.
But I'm just thinking of a hook. Something, if you're gonna learn how to think critically, and it's like, okay. But to me, for some reason, the ways begs that it's an acronym for something. And so I just like to plant that seed.
Remember, the program is called the Potsdam Pathways.
Oh, so this is the ways part of the pathways?
Does that work for you?
Maybe.
Sort of.
Well, we thought of this, and actually this kind of came out early. We really, this idea of a pathway is, and again, where's Mindy? Mindy's going to hate me for doing this. She's like, Alan, just stay with anthropology and genetics, right? So we really kind of see this as like the journey, the metaphor of the journey, you're going in a certain direction, but you're not prescribed, right? You're not in a box, you're not forced along, there's no guardrails that you're wandering, that it's a pathway through. He's like, shut up, Alan. So, I'm gonna stop. I'm not telling you. Right?
No, I know what you're saying, but I'm just, we're into the it's not even a 10-second soundbite anymore because our attention span is like 2 seconds. I mean, and I'm guilty if I, type in a website and it doesn't load, I'm like, I'm out of there. I'm going to some other place where that, shows instant gratification is one thing. But just my brain sees ways as an acronym. Perhaps the S is seminar.
We can make something up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I
mean, not make something.
No, I know what you mean. But I just think you need. Mindy knows. Well, you need a hook. You need a. This is your. To me, pathways is even too long.
Wandering around for years.
It could be, yeah. I was kind of having trouble. I was having trouble with the why. Well, I came up with winning for the W.
Isn't the hook? The hook has got to be your advisor.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But you've got to get them.
Got to steer that.
Yeah, but you've got to get them in the door first, Richard.
Right.
You've got to get them in the door first before they even get an advisor.
Well, but I don't think not to debate you, but I'm not quite sure if that particular situation is going to get them in the door, out the door.
Well, it's going to help.
Part of what we would need to do if this program is approved in April, May is certainly start working immediately with Mindy, with the admissions folks. That's not what faculty do, but I think that's what they do. So we would have to obviously redo all of our admissions material, to really highlight the strengths of the program.
Good job.
It wasn't me, it was the faculty that are working, so I played a small role in this.
Collectively. Yeah. It takes a village. And just say a 30-person committee?
A 30-person task force, yeah, don't ever do that. That's what I learned from that. But it was good, but I mean, we had buy-in from across the campus.
You know what the definition of a camel is? A horse designed by a committee. Especially a 30-person committee. All right, on that note, any other questions, comments? Good job, Paul.
Thank you. I would appreciate my colleagues' comments. If you need anything, if there's more information we can provide, we'd love to come back. We'd love to talk to you.
Yes.
All faculty are all really excited about this. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Have a great meeting.
Thank you.
Would you get back to work? Okay, we're moving on to our reports. And Kaja 2 is in class. So her report is included in your packet. If you haven't read it, you can catch up later. So moving right along to the Faculty Senate, Kim Bouchard. And they answered, because my next question was gonna be, well, what about the faculty senate and where are they? But they're way ahead of me in that, so.
Yes, and as they reported, they've been regularly reporting to, and not that it hasn't been controversial, but it has been, so, you know, I don't want to soften that too much.
Since 1980, right?
Since 1980, yes. So it's always one of those parts of the curriculum that's very, very important, and people are very committed to it. But there's a lot of very healthy discussion about it. So I've been pleased to be able to and facilitate. How do we facilitate that good discussion? So and keep it active and similar questions. You know, your questions are all similar to the other ones that we're bringing to. So faculty senate report. Any questions, though I have to make one revision because I was being a little bit looking ahead too far, and that's on the third bullet point under the full faculty and faculty senate meeting on Thursday, March 28th. It will cover a number of important issues. I thought it might get your attention, the review of the Board of Trustees mandated sexual and romantic relationship policy, but we're actually not going to cover that at that meeting. It is something that I think it was October, the end of October, when they passed that. I don't know if you got that report too, June, from the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, it was in the fall, but I don't.
It was sometime this fall.
Yeah.
And so when they make that kind of policy change, it goes to the campus and they specifically ask the government to become involved with that. So, but it turns out that in the interim, there's been some activity.
Yes,
Right.
what we learned, we had been charged with developing a sexual and romantic relationship policy by March 1st, as well as a policy on sexual harassment and a few other things. One of the steps in here is obviously to meet with our collective bargaining partners, and rather than go school by school, SUNY and the UUP will be doing this at the statewide level. So we have had discussions around a sexual and romantic relationship policy, had begun the discussion with the UUP, had begun the process of involving Senate, but SUNY's asked us to wait while they have the negotiation statewide. But we will still, Board of Trustee policy still requests that we have something in place by March 1st.
So it's not a mandated policy, it's mandated
Actually,
that you,
it's mandated that we have one,
yeah.
yes, thank you,
mandated
Roger.
that you have one, or the
Yes.
contents of it are mandated?
Mandated that we have one with some specific contents. They should have just, they could have just mandated that we endorse a particular one, but there's a little bit of campus leeway.
Yeah, and they say something like consistent with.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
consistent with the.
Correct.
So
I'm used to that.
it is a stronger policy than we currently have. in
Correct,
place.
it is.
It's more strongly worded. So we will have to make some changes, which I think will come out of that state negotiation.
Correct.
So any questions for me about what's going on at Faculty Senate level?
When are the elections?
The elections, actually, we just hit the button this morning to send out for nominations. So the nominations for standing committee membership and for the chair are now live, and those nominations will be accepted through the end of February. We'll then put together the ballots, and they will be available right after we get back from our spring break, which I think is March 18th. And so then they'll be live usually we leave them up for 2 weeks. So by the end of March, we'll have our new faculty senate standing committees, and also a new chair will hopefully be voted and ready to go. And then that'll give me time to be able to transition with a new chair too. We haven't ever done that in the past, but I think that's a good idea. Rather than coming in cold, right? So be able to transition.
You can appreciate that, right?
Yes, having come in cold, yeah. So, but also the other thing that's exciting, we're also working with departments and divisions so that they're going through the bylaws indicate ways in which delegates are voted by departments and by divisions. And so we're working with departments and divisions to make sure they're following the bylaws, which has been a little bit loosey-goosey up till now. So they will now be going through an election process to elect delegates to the Faculty Senate that will be on a 2-year term. So. Great.
So somebody else counting days now, Walt, it's not just you.
Yeah, no, yeah, me too. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Moving right along. Academic Affairs Report from our Provost, Betty Bergeron.
So to be brief as well, just a quick call out to the new Student Academic Services One Stop, which is on the 4th floor of this building. Result of a year of pretty intensive training led by Jill Caron and her wonderful team with her registrar, bursar, and financial aid. So it's been both a philosophical shift and a physical change of space and how we deal with incoming students and their many questions. So we're collecting data on student usage and all of that, but right now things are running really smoothly, and anecdotally we've been hearing from students that it's working really well, and they have keyed into what the One Stop is pretty quickly and easily. So we're really excited with that. It's the right thing to do, but also an important retention initiative. So,
Wonderful.
thank you.
I think it's a great idea too.
Thank you. Yeah, it certainly avoids the running around, and it provides coordination of services that we haven't done very well in the past. So I'm just really proud of that team. It's been an incredible amount of work to do that. Kristen mentioned the work in progress for environmental science, so we're excited about that. Some other programs that are in the works in various stages of approval, the computer science educator, that had already gone out for comment with SUNY, so it's back with Walt to get ready for the paperwork for the next step for submission. We have a really interesting and innovative nanotechnology bachelor's degree proposal that is under development. It will be one of the first and certainly most unique in the country at the undergraduate level. We've got a team working also on global or international health. And what is exciting with all of those 4 proposals is that they are truly interdisciplinary, and in at least 2 of the cases also across schools, so not only across multiple departments, but really shows that spirit of collaboration across the schools. So some exciting things under development. It does take time to get programs from concept all the way through registration. But we continue to try to work with SUNY to figure out ways to streamline the process. So we're getting a little bit better about that as well. With Michael here, I don't know if he wanted to do any updates on the crane renovations, but that's certainly been an exciting in-process development as well.
I have a question on that. How much is that renovation projected to cost?
The total is 20-ish million. I think it includes sort of 3 big components, and I'll do this quickly, but I have a little show and tell here. So there's an addition to the building. This is Hosmer in the background. So if you're on the far side and you're looking at Hosmer, it will fit in adjoining Bishop Hall. It's located where Cassie's Harp is currently located, the garden with the sculpture. That will move out. It's not in this drawing, but that will be moved this summer. And the addition will sit here, which will include a very large rehearsal room, which will be a safe acoustical space. That was a prime driver of this. And that was what led to our getting the initial legislative allocation, which I think was 2015. 14. Which was $3 million, and that's part of this fund. And then new offices, a new front door, so to speak, with a lobby. It gives us, right now it's kind of problematic. If you want to go into Crane, well, you go here and then go around and so on. So a nice entrance. Then the lower level of Bishop, so this is the addition, and you can look at this up close later if you want. We're renovating our existing rehearsal rooms, some adjoining spaces, and the percussion area. So those will all be completely redone. The other components include a lot of infrastructure work in the basement, with new air handlers and aspects of the HVAC system, which would be beneficial to the whole building to some extent. And they're replacing, we have to replace the fire alarms. So the construction fund has worked with us to turn that into not just replacing the fire alarms, but all the ceilings and lighting in all of the corridors and the whole complex. So that will be a cosmetic improvement as well as needed, LED lighting. But our ceilings are kind of shabby at this point, so it looks much better. So as Eric said, it's the total of all of that is 20 million-ish. And we've been working closely with the SUNY Construction Fund. The timeline is that the bids will go out later this spring, will be finalized in the summer. The project will start in the fall. And the current projection is it will be complete by August 2021. I'm cautioning everybody that that's where it looks like right now, but these things change. So one thing we're very busy with right now at Crane is figuring out how we live in a construction zone for 2 years-ish, and so who can go where. But we're well along and working with that. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. So I'll leave this somewhere that you can look at it after your meeting. I'll put it over here.
Thank you.
I might add, we're also thinking of Sal sitting here. We're also looking at naming opportunities. This gives us an opportunity to invite donors to name rooms, etc. So we're seeing it through that lens as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Anything else? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right along to Business Affairs and Administrative Division, Aaron Johnson Ortiz.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So for the Business Affairs Office, some of the things that have taken place most recently, we have, at the request of the President and President of Faculty Senate Bouchard, put together a Faculty Affairs and Strategic Planning Committee. We've had our first meeting and we're given our charge by the President. I think this is going to be a very beneficial committee. It consists of a group, wide range of different individuals across many different areas of the campus to help us to look at our financial situation and move us in a positive direction in preparation for the next budgeting cycle, which as has been discussed before, SUNY's got a very interesting budgeting cycle. Their budget, they don't request budget information until after the start of the fiscal year. This last year, I got it on July 22nd that they wanted the information for the July 1 start, which I'll leave it at that. And so, my hope is to move our campus budget process quicker than that. I would like us to be done definitely before the end of our fiscal year, hopefully before the end of the start of the summer period, so that we can have a good campus discussion with faculty and all the parties that need to be part of this. So that's going to be starting very, very soon. I'm working on the final templates right now. Regarding other areas, Human Resources is working on quite a few policies and working on getting these policies discussed both here on campus and with the different union organizations to a lot of different things that are happening there. Within Computer and Technology Services, with Romine sitting there, there's just a plate full of things that I guess juggling would be the best way to put it. It goes from one to another, and some of it's cascades, some of it are siloed, but there's a lot of things that are going on there that probably could take up multiple pages if we hadn't had a chance. Probably the biggest thing, again, physical plant has been doing a wonderful job. There's a lot of new things that we're planning on renovation. We're definitely working a lot with the capital construction fund. It's a wonderful source of funding for us, and we have a lot of things in plan, but they do a great job, and you know, Andy works with definitely. I'll just put it bluntly. I've cut his budget quite a bit. He's doing a good job with it this year, and he's also dealing with the day-to-day operations that come up. Just to point out that we had some issues with some of our wastewater, as it were, in different areas around campus for a multitude of reasons, and the 1-2. It's open and things are flowing, so we're back online. So I just got that message a little bit ago. So my kudos to his group for working in some really adverse conditions. But we're moving forward, and I'll have more information as we prepare our budget moving along the line further down the calendar year. So I'd stand for any questions.
You're off easy today.
Thank you.
Sal Kania.
Yes.
Head of advancement.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
I'm delighted to be doing it. Good morning again, everybody. I'm going to highlight a few things from the report, and when the news is good, we always start with fundraising. And indeed, the news and fundraising is good here right now. We're tracking very well to be hitting our projected cash goal here, 2.9 million for the year. As of the end of January, we are at 2.7 million cash in. There are sub-goals within that, and one of the sub-goals is endowment fundraising. We've already hit that sub-goal, so we're going to be focusing on the other two goals for the rest of this fiscal year. The unrestricted giving and restricted giving to departments. And in those categories, we're about halfway there, which makes sense when you're about halfway through the fundraising year. So things are looking very good for us to reach and hopefully exceed the goal that we have, which of course positions us very well going into next year. One of the things we're rolling out this spring semester is a new giving vehicle for scholarships. Right now, a donor could make a gift to a scholarship pool. Generally, those gifts are sort of at the lower level, but it's a pool of money that we use for scholarships. At the other end, a donor can make a gift and create an endowment that's at the $25,000 and above level to endow a scholarship. There's really not been anything in the middle. And this category is a category that we call annual leadership giving. And so this vehicle is intended to solve a few issues for us, get donors into that middle category, and also provide direct scholarships to students. This vehicle will allow donors to make a gift of $2,500 or above annually, and I'll explain that in a second. But because it's an annual gift, the money goes directly to a student. And we're asking folks maybe to commit that for 4 years for obvious reasons. We will then be selecting a student. The donor will know who the student is and get some periodic reports on the student so that they can feel a connection to the student that they're in effect sponsoring and working through the 4 years. The average gap for a student between their ability to pay and the resources available to help them, I'm told, is about $2,500, and that's why we're starting this at the $2,500 mark. So in effect, somebody making a gift at that level makes it possible for a student to come to Potsdam. It's quite powerful stuff. We're looking forward to doing that. I am going to resist any temptation based on earlier conversation to tell you anything about a marketing strategy or a name for this. So I'm going to move right along.
How about pathway?
Pathway.
Sure.
As long as it's an acronym, right?
Right.
How about it's flowing?
Can I ask one question? On that $2,500 down, who picks the student?
It's technically not an endowment. It's an outright gift.
Okay.
So the full amount goes to the student.
I know, but who picks the
The,
student?
the college picks the student. It preserves any tax deduction that a donor may have. And frankly, it's, we know, financial aid knows the students. So, yes, thank you.
So it's based just on financial need?
Financial need for the students. That'll be the prime criteria. And donors may be able to, for example, select a school student in arts and sciences. It would be nice if you could select somebody there. And again, this is kind of a middle ground. With the pool, you get nothing, you get nothing, no names, no nothing. In endowment, you have an agreement and you pick criteria, whatever you may wish. This is in the middle. Okay. The executive committee of the Potsdam College Foundation Board earlier this week passed a resolution to begin the campaign planning process. So an early step, but a critical step for us to begin moving in the direction of the next comprehensive fundraising campaign. We're targeting fall maybe of 2022 to begin the silent phase of that. And obviously, much more information will be coming in that regard. On a personnel note, we did not know of this when we prepared the report, but Emily Hutchison, the AVP for advancement, has announced that she's going to be leaving Potsdam. Her last day here will be the 15th of this month. Emily is moving to become the Director of Development at a healthcare facility in eastern Vermont, somewhere closer to her home. Very sad to see her leaving. She's been here for over 10 years. Made just an incredible contribution to the development effort here and the alumni effort here. And so it's a loss for us, but of course we're going to be looking at it also as creating an opportunity to do some reshuffling of resources with full intention of moving the program forward full speed. And the last item, just a couple of things that are coming up. The foundation board meeting this year is on April 13th, a little earlier than it's been in the past. And the local festival coming up the end of April. That's an arts festival, about 10 days here on the campus, provided through a gift to us. It's an endowment that funds that festival for us each year. All of the events are free, and I'm told that this year we're expanding it to downtown. So we're going to be closing the streets and partying down there, snow or not. Questions? Questions? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Student Affairs, tell us some good news, Eric.
Thanks. All right, so not in your notes, but something that happened after I sent the report in, that President's Council, with wide consultation, approved for students a new preferred first name policy for the campus. Now that we have Banner 9, we have the capability of students being able to provide preferred names rather than their legal names. And so HR is one of the policies Eric mentioned, is working on a similar for employees, but providing that, as I say, the heavy lifting of Romine's team is able to do all the computer programming and interface, that starting this fall, students will be able to provide and be called a preferred name through faculty, have it printed on ID cards, which will they've been asking for years. So we're excited that that's in place.
How do you check?
Well, we have a large population of transgender students, for example, on campus, and they may go by a different name than their legal name. Certainly there are means that they can change their legal name, but some of them are not yet at that point where they want to do that, but they have a preferred name that's different. So they're able to provide that annually to the college, and then that will get populated in a number of different areas. There are certain things that we have to continue to use a legal name, transcripts and things like that, but on class rosters, ID cards, things like that. If a student wants to be called something different, or a faculty or staff member wants to be called something different. We are actually behind them. There are a number of SUNYs that already do this because they've had some different technology and things, but again, providing that Romine and his team can work that interface and programming, we'll have that for our students in the fall. And when I brought that to student government, they all stood and applauded. So Faculty Senate has been involved, and so it's be a nice addition for our students. A couple things to highlight in the information that you have. We already mentioned some things about athletics, but I want to particularly highlight one of our many student athletes that we're proud of. We had, for the first time in quite some time, an All-American athlete from our women's soccer team. Only our third female athlete ever in our history to be named as an All-American, so we're really proud of Brooke, and we've already touted in previous reports the accomplishments of the women's soccer team, but that particular piece had not been known prior to our last meeting, and I hope everybody, if you're around, can attend events at Maxey tonight. In terms of campus life, our micro-credentialing program is continuing. I believe Ruth is coming to the next meeting to present on that to College Council. She'll be able to tell you, there's a summary in here, but they're piloting a bunch of leadership and badge programs for students, and she'll explain that in detail. We just received earlier this week that we were renewed for the second year of that PIF grant, so Betty and Ruth and the president and I need to quickly convene before we submit something on the 20th, some budget stuff, but that's a terrific asset program for our students. Under the Counseling Center, they had their busiest fall semester ever. They saw 117 less students in the fall than they saw all of last year. So students are continuing to use that with greater frequency, and that doesn't count another over 100 students that our student peer counselors saw on top of that. So they're reorganized a little bit to have some more walk-in and crisis appointments, but they remain very busy, as is our psychiatric nurse practitioner. So both of those are serving our students well, in addition to workshops and groups and things they're trying to do to maximize the impact on students. In terms of residence life, they're gearing up for the returning student housing process. They spent a tremendous amount of time in collaboration with the Student Success Center working on retention efforts, students who weren't registered, helping them get registered or sending them on their way if they had significant outstanding bills so that they don't start accruing more debt, and they really did a great, they went from 500 and some odd students to 15 by the time the semester started, and did a great effort with that. Student conduct, you met Patrick. I am beyond thrilled to have him here, since essentially it's been a year between maternity leaves and other things that we haven't had a director in place. So, and he has already hit, he's not super busy, but he has already hit the ground with some cases. We did have our first hearing earlier, actually just before the semester started, but thankfully we haven't had a lot of conduct board hearings, and the new code of conduct and implementing that is going very well, and again, appreciate everybody's support on that. Student health, I had mentioned, is already busy with their appointments and numbers. Mentioned that we started a new process with immunization compliance with our spring semester. Once students were accepted and deposited, we actually put an immunization hold on their account that made them provide their compliance materials prior to picking classes, rather than waiting till 30 days after classes and then having to drop classes. And so that was a good model, also in collaboration with the Student Success Center, that seemed to work really well. And lastly, just quickly, in terms of University Police, we have 2 officers retiring this semester, Jody Daggett and Steve Leashaw, who have both been long-standing officers serving on our campuses, and Steve was at SUNY camp for a while. So we have 1 new officer that's already started, Jose Colon. We still have either from Norwood or Norfolk, I can't remember which department. And the second officer that we had hoped to have hired, that didn't work out, so they've just finished recanvassing, and we'll have another process to do next year with another retirement. So there's some turnover with some of their staff there, but everything's going well with the University Police as well. So that's a quick highlight of departments in my area. Happy to take any questions. Pardon? Yeah, that's a good idea. So you all have in your folders a flyer for an event that Nicole and our athletic department has been working hard at. We're going to host, a couple of years ago in Messina, they had a similar thing. Steve, you may remember that as well, when the Messina Arena hosted, through the Rec Commission, the Montreal Canadiens alumni team to play. So we're doing that again here, and for those that are hockey fans know that the Canadiens' nickname are the Habs, so they will be playing against the Have-Nots, which was a very creative name that our facilities person in Maxey, Dustin, that's not mine. So there are a group of friends of the college that are paying to play against the Canadians team. There are still open spots at the team as well as
And
some
are they
other-
having pre-game physicals, I hope?
Well, I think they'll be signing waivers to participate at their own risk.
Well, won't the lawyers tell you that those are not worth the
Absolutely.
paper they're written on?
Oh, yes, they are. They
We-
serve a
And
purpose.
Eric will be reffing the game, so if you
yeah.
wanna come watch that.
The non-celebrity will be.
So he better have a physical too.
Yes, absolutely. I will have that update. We don't know who's coming yet. They haven't told us. They'll give us a couple of names that we could publicize and then a couple of more names. But coming up on March 3rd, general admissions tickets are $20, but there's a $50 VIP, which includes a reception, autograph sessions that will happen with the players before the game. So we
Will you be
appreciate
signing autographs as
if
well?
there are some poor souls that would like that, that have low standards of, I would be happy to sign anything, but the attraction is gonna certainly be the alumni activities, so certainly invite all of you to attend and participate if you're able.
Thank you. Sounds like fun. Okay, thank you for the explanation, because I didn't get the head nods thing.
But I saw it there and I didn't have it in my notes, and Nicole whispered to me, as she often does, to keep me on track, so thank you.
Thanks, Eric, for the debt.
I don't have a lot of updates, just one thing, the Center for SUNY collaborated with Campus Live on the food drive during Winter Fest, and they received 1,834 donations as of this Monday, which was the deadline, and $550 cash. So they were really thrilled about it. And the only other thing is that Campus Climate Survey for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion will be launched today. Just went out, like 10 minutes ago. It will remain open until March 8th.
Okay.
Will we get a report on that at the next?
Absolutely. So we're collaborating with HEADS, which is a higher education data sharing consortium, and so they want administering this survey and they'll be sharing all the data with us. We'll send out 3 reminders after today.
Okay. Questions? Anything? Okay. Thanks, Bernadette. Old business.
Roger, why'd you look at me?
I was gonna say, since I'm the oldest, I don't have any. Does anybody else? No? Okay. Any new business? When is graduation? I want to say May 18th.
That is correct. That
Oh,
is correct.
it is.
Saturday, May 18th.
Okay. All right. And our next council meeting is April 26th. Yes, I know, with the students. So this is a highlight of the year. And Brian, can I ask you to chair that meeting?
Sure.
Because it's Grandparents' Day, and we'll be in Connecticut.
God bless. I'll be happy.
Yes, I'm sorry to miss breakfast with our wonderful students, but
We'll save you some.
thank you. Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Richard, no?
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay. Moved by Richard, seconded by Molly.
I got a second. Oh, you beat me.
You can second,
Richard
Brian.
and I had this all arranged.
Thirded by Brian.
We did.
Yeah. Cannot.
Well, it's on.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you very much for braving the wind.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Good luck with your.
Well,
Thank you.
weigh like 3 pounds.
Please, hope no trees, trees on buildings,
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.